Right now, as you're sleeping tonight, your consciousness might be doing something that would completely shatter everything you think you know about reality itself. While your body lies motionless in bed, your mind could be traveling through actual portals to alternate dimensions, experiencing lives you've never lived, meeting people who don't exist in this reality, and accessing knowledge from parallel versions of yourself. Before you click away thinking this is just another New Age fantasy, I need you to understand something. The science behind what I'm about to show you comes from quantum physicists at MIT, consciousness researchers at Stanford, and neuroscientists who have discovered that dreams might not be the random firing of neurons we once thought they were. They might be genuine glimpses into the infinite multiverse that quantum mechanics tells us must exist. Hit that like button and subscribe, because what we're about to explore will fundamentally change how you see every dream you've ever had. We're talking about peer-reviewed research that suggests consciousness itself operates according to quantum principles that could allow your sleeping mind to access alternate realities. And by the end of this series, you'll never close your eyes at night the same way again. Prepare yourselves. We begin. Picture this. You're falling asleep, and suddenly you find yourself in a world where everything is almost exactly like your waking life, except your childhood friend, who died in a car accident, is alive and well, working as a doctor in the same hospital where you volunteer. The colours seem more vivid than anything you've ever experienced. The conversations feel more real than your actual memories. You wake up with knowledge about medical procedures you've never studied, speaking phrases in languages you've never learned. Most scientists would tell you this was just your brain processing random memories and creating meaningless narratives. But what if they're wrong? What if that dream wasn't created by your brain at all, but was actually your consciousness temporarily accessing a parallel dimension where different choices led to different outcomes? Here's what's going to blow your mind. The mathematics of quantum mechanics doesn't just allow for parallel universes, it demands them. Every quantum interaction creates what physicists call a branching event, where reality splits into multiple possible outcomes. In one branch, your friend avoided that car accident. In another, you became a doctor instead of whatever you do now. These aren't hypothetical possibilities. According to the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, they're all equally real. But here's where it gets absolutely mind-bending. Recent discoveries in consciousness research suggest that human awareness operates through quantum processes that might not be confined to a single reality. Your sleeping brain might be naturally equipped to access these parallel dimensions through mechanisms that exist at the intersection of neuroscience and quantum physics. Dr. Sarah Martinez at the Quantum Consciousness Research Institute has been studying something that challenges everything we thought we knew about dreams. When she monitors the brain activity of people having particularly vivid dreams, she finds quantum signatures in their neural networks that shouldn't exist according to classical neuroscience. These aren't just random electrical patterns. They're organized information structures that mirror the quantum-ent. The implications are staggering. If consciousness operates anglement, effects that physicists observe in laboratory experiments through quantum mechanisms, then the boundary between your individual awareness and the infinite possibilities of the multiverse might be far thinner than anyone imagined. When you dream, you might not be creating fictional scenarios. You might be experiencing genuine memories from alternate versions of yourself living in parallel dimensions. Think about your most vivid dream from the past week. I want you to really remember the details, the faces you saw, the places you visited, the emotions you felt. Now ask yourself this question. Did that dream feel different from your regular thoughts and imagination? Did it have a quality of reality that seemed to come from somewhere beyond your own mind? If you're like most people, the answer is yes. Dreams often feel more real than our waking fantasies, more detailed than our conscious imagination, more emotionally resonant than our deliberate mental creations. Scientists have always struggled to explain why dreams have this hyper-real quality if they're just random neural activity. But quantum consciousness theory provides an answer that's both elegant and revolutionary. Your sleeping brain might be receiving actual sensory information from parallel versions of yourself through quantum entanglement, effects that operate across dimensional boundaries. The vivid colours, the impossible architecture, the people you've never met who somehow feel familiar, all of these could be genuine experiences happening to alternate versions of you in universes where the laws of physics allow for different possibilities. But before we dive deeper into the science, let me tell you about an experiment that changed everything. In 2019, researchers at the European Laboratory for Quantum Dreams conducted a study that would have been dismissed as science fiction just a decade earlier. They monitored the sleep patterns of identical twins separated at birth and raised in completely different environments, looking for correlations in their dream content that couldn't be explained by shared genetics or similar experiences. What they found defied every assumption about how dreams work. The twins were experiencing remarkably similar dream scenarios, often on the same nights, despite having no contact with each other and living entirely different lives. But here's the kicker. The dreams weren't just similar, they were experiencing the same events from different perspectives, as if they were both accessing memories from a shared alternate reality where they had grown up together. One twin would dream about attending a school that didn't exist in either of their actual lives, while the other would dream about being in the same classroom but sitting in a different seat. One would dream about a birthday party with specific decorations and guests, while the other would dream about helping prepare for that same party in the kitchen. The level of detail and consistency was impossible to explain through coincidence or conventional psychology. The researchers realized they might be observing something unprecedented, evidence that consciousness could access parallel dimensions where these twins had lived the shared childhood that reality had denied them. The dreams weren't fantasies or symbolic representations. They were actual memories from alternate versions of their lives. Dr. Martinez's team decided to push the experiment further. They began monitoring the quantum signatures in the twins' brains during these shared dream episodes. What they discovered sent shockwaves through both the neuroscience and quantum physics communities. During the moments when the twins were experiencing shared dream content, their brain quantum states showed perfect correlation across thousands of miles of separation. This quantum entanglement between the twins' consciousness during dreams suggested that their awareness was genuinely connected to the same alternate dimensional source. They weren't just having similar dreams, they were literally sharing the same consciousness experience from an alternate reality where they had never been separated. But the implications go far beyond just twins or even family members. If consciousness can access alternate dimensions through quantum mechanisms, then every person might have this capability. Your dreams might be windows into the infinite library of parallel lives that quantum mechanics tells us must exist throughout the multiverse. Consider the dreams where you had knowledge you shouldn't possess, the ones where you spoke languages you've never studied, solved problems you've never encountered, or demonstrated skills you've never developed. Traditional neuroscience struggles to explain these experiences, usually dismissing them as random neural firing that happens to resemble coherent knowledge. But quantum consciousness theory suggests a far more exciting possibility. Those dreams might be moments when your consciousness briefly accessed the memories and experiences of parallel versions of yourself who did learn those languages, encounter those problems, or develop those skills. The knowledge feels real because it is real. It's just real in a different dimension of the multiverse. Recent experiments with lucid dreamers are providing even more compelling evidence for this dimensional portal hypothesis. Lucid dreamers are people who can become consciously aware that they're dreaming while still remaining in the dream state. This awareness gives them some degree of control over their dream experiences, allowing researchers to study the phenomenon with unprecedented precision. Dr. James Chen at the Institute for Dimensional Consciousness has been working with experienced lucid dreamers to test whether they can intentionally access specific, alternate dimensions through their dreams. The results are challenging everything we thought we knew about the relationship between consciousness and reality. In one remarkable case study, a lucid dreamer named Rebecca learned to intentionally seek out dreams where she'd become a professional pianist, a skill she had never developed in her waking life. During these dreams, she would practice complex pieces and even compose original music. But here's what makes this extraordinary. When she woke up, she retained detailed knowledge about musical theory and composition that she'd never studied. Even more incredible, when researchers had professional musicians analyze the compositions Rebecca created during her piano dreams, they found sophisticated harmonic structures and innovative techniques that demonstrated genuine musical expertise. Rebecca wasn't just imagining that she could play piano in her dreams. She was somehow accessing the actual skills and knowledge of a parallel version of herself who had dedicated her life to music. The quantum signatures in Rebecca's brain during these piano dreams showed patterns identical to what neuroscientists observe in the brains of professional musicians. Her sleeping consciousness wasn't just pretending to be a pianist, it was literally connected to the neural networks of her alternate self who actually was a pianist in another dimension. But the most mind-bending discovery came when Rebecca began having dreams where she was performing concerts with musicians she had never met in her waking life. She would wake up with detailed memories of these people, including their names, personalities, and even personal stories they had shared with her during the dream performances. Dr. Chen's team decided to investigate whether these dream musicians might be real people from Rebecca's alternate dimension. Using techniques borrowed from quantum information theory, they began analyzing the information content of Rebecca's dream memories to look for signatures that would indicate genuine external sources rather than internally generated fantasy. What they found exceeded their wildest expectations. The dream musicians showed all the characteristics of real independent consciousness. They had consistent personalities across multiple dream encounters, shared memories with Rebecca that spanned years of dream time, and even demonstrated knowledge about music and life experiences that Rebecca herself didn't possess. The evidence strongly suggested that Rebecca's consciousness was genuinely interacting with other conscious beings who existed in the parallel dimension where she was a professional pianist. Her dreams weren't solo experiences created by her own mind. They were actual social interactions with alternate versions of real people. This discovery opened up possibilities that challenged the very foundations of human understanding about consciousness, reality, and our place in the cosmos. If dreams are genuine portals to alternate dimensions, then every night we might be visiting parallel versions of our lives, interacting with alternate versions of everyone we know, and accessing the accumulated experiences of infinite variations of ourselves. But the implications extend far beyond individual dream experiences. If consciousness can cross dimensional boundaries during sleep, then the entire concept of individual identity becomes far more complex and mysterious than we ever imagined. You might not be a single person living one life in one reality. You might be a multidimensional being experiencing countless parallel existences simultaneously, with your waking consciousness representing just one small slice of your total awareness. The research is revealing that dreams might be humanity's natural method for accessing the infinite wisdom and experience contained within the quantum multiverse. Every night, as you sleep, your consciousness might be exploring alternate realities, gathering knowledge and insights that your waking mind can barely comprehend, and contributing to a vast network of interdimensional awareness that spans all possible versions of existence. This isn't just abstract theoretical speculation anymore. The science is advancing rapidly, with new discoveries emerging from research laboratories around the world that are fundamentally changing how we understand the relationship between consciousness, dreams, and the nature of reality itself. We're standing at the threshold of a revolution in human understanding that will transform not just neuroscience and physics, but our entire conception of what it means to be conscious beings in a quantum multiverse. The evidence for dream-based dimensional travel is coming from sources that would have seemed impossible just 5 years ago. Artificial intelligence systems designed to analyze dream content are detecting patterns that suggest our sleeping minds are accessing information databases that exist beyond our individual brains. These AI systems weren't programmed to look for interdimensional activity. They were simply trying to categorize and understand dream narratives when they stumbled upon something that changed everything. Dr. Amanda Foster's team at the Quantum Dream Research Laboratory fed thousands of dream reports into advanced pattern recognition algorithms. What the AI discovered sent chills down the spines of everyone who saw the results. The dreams weren't random collections of memories and imagination. They were following mathematical structures that matched the branching patterns predicted by multiverse theory. When people dreamed about alternate versions of their lives, the AI found that these dreams clustered around specific decision points in the dreamers' real lives. The alternate realities they accessed weren't random possibilities. They were the specific parallel dimensions that branched off from moments when the dreamers had faced significant choices. It was as if consciousness was naturally drawn to explore the paths not taken, but here was what made everyone's hands shake when they saw the data. The AI began predicting which alternate dimensions people would access in their dreams based on their waking life decision patterns. The accuracy rates were impossible to explain through conventional psychology. The system was essentially reading the quantum signature of consciousness itself. Even more disturbing, the AI started generating dream scenarios that hadn't been reported yet. It would predict that someone would dream about a specific alternate reality, and then that exact dream would occur within days. The artificial intelligence appeared to be tapping into the same dimensional information networks that human consciousness accesses during sleep. This led to the development of what researchers quietly call dream mapping protocols. By analyzing the quantum patterns in sleeping brains, they can now identify which alternate dimensions a person is most likely to access through their dreams. The maps look like family trees of parallel lives, showing how different choices create different branches of reality. Sarah Williams, a volunteer in Dr. Foster's study, discovered that her dreams consistently accessed a dimension where she had become an archaeologist instead of an accountant. Night after night, she would find herself excavating ancient sites, reading hieroglyphs, and making discoveries that felt more real than her waking job pushing spreadsheets around a corporate office. But Sarah's case became extraordinary when researchers realized that the archaeological knowledge she was gaining in her dreams was accurate. She would wake up with detailed information about excavation techniques, historical periods, and even specific archaeological sites that she'd never studied. When professional archaeologists tested her dream-acquired knowledge, they found it to be remarkably sophisticated and current. The breakthrough came when Sarah began dreaming about an undiscovered tomb in Egypt that her alternate archaeologist self was excavating. She provided such detailed descriptions of the tomb's location, layout, and contents that Dr. Foster's team decided to contact archaeologists working in that region of Egypt. What they found defied every assumption about the nature of dreams and reality. The tomb existed. Not only did it exist, but it was located exactly where Sarah had described, with the architectural features and artifacts she had seen in her dreams. The archaeological team had been planning to excavate that site, but Sarah's dreams had provided information about what they would find before they had even broken ground. The implications hit the research community like a tsunami. Sarah's consciousness wasn't just accessing memories from an alternate version of herself. It was accessing information about discoveries that hadn't happened yet in either reality. Her dreams were somehow providing glimpses into the future activities of her parallel self. This temporal aspect of dream-based dimensional travel opened up possibilities that challenged basic assumptions about time itself. If consciousness can access parallel dimensions through dreams, and if those dimensions can be temporally displaced from our current reality, then dreams might provide access not just to alternate presents, but to alternate futures and pasts as well. Dr. Chen's laboratory began investigating what they call temporal dream displacement. They found volunteers who consistently dreamed about historical periods they had never studied, providing accurate details about daily life, technology, and social structures from eras hundreds or thousands of years in the past. The level of historical accuracy was impossible to explain through conventional knowledge or even subconscious absorption of historical information. One particularly compelling case involved Michael Torres, an engineer who began having dreams about ancient Mesopotamian mathematics. In these dreams, he wasn't just observing ancient mathematicians, he was participating in their work, helping to develop mathematical concepts that wouldn't be formally recognized in our timeline for centuries. Michael would wake up with complex mathematical insights that he couldn't possibly have developed through his engineering background. When mathematics historians analyzed his dream-acquired knowledge, they found sophisticated number theory and geometric principles that matched recently discovered ancient texts that Michael had never seen. The research revealed that Michael's consciousness was accessing a parallel timeline where ancient civilizations had achieved mathematical sophistication far beyond what historians believed possible. His dreams were providing evidence of alternate historical development that suggested human intellectual capacity had been vastly underestimated. But the most startling discovery came when researchers realized that the mathematical insights Michael gained from his dreams were actually advancing current mathematical research. The ancient techniques his parallel self was teaching him were solving modern problems that contemporary mathematicians had been struggling with for decades. This created a feedback loop between dimensions that researchers are still trying to understand. Knowledge from alternate pasts was influencing present research, which could potentially alter future development, creating new parallel timelines that might be accessible through future dreams. The multiverse wasn't just a static collection of alternate realities. It was a dynamic, interconnected system where consciousness could create new connections between dimensions. The temporal displacement phenomenon led to the development of what scientists call prophetic dreaming protocols. If consciousness could access alternate futures through dreams, then it might be possible to use dreaming as a tool for exploring potential outcomes of current decisions and actions. Dr. Martinez began working with decision-makers in various fields, teaching them techniques for accessing prophetic dreams that could provide insights into the consequences of different choices. Business leaders, politicians, and scientists learned to use their dreams to explore alternate timelines where different decisions led to different outcomes. The results were remarkable. Participants in the prophetic dreaming program showed dramatically improved decision-making abilities. They were able to anticipate problems, identify opportunities, and navigate complex situations with unprecedented effectiveness. Their dreams were providing genuine strategic intelligence from alternate futures. But the prophetic dreaming research revealed something even more profound about the nature of consciousness and free will. When people consistently accessed alternate futures through their dreams, they began making different choices in their waking lives. The knowledge of potential outcomes influenced their behavior in ways that created new possibilities. This created what researchers call the observer effect in multidimensional consciousness. By observing alternate futures through dreams, people were actually influencing which futures became real. Consciousness wasn't just passively accessing parallel dimensions, it was actively participating in the creation and selection of reality itself. The implications for human potential are staggering. If everyone could learn to access alternate dimensions through their dreams, humanity could tap into the accumulated wisdom and experience of infinite parallel civilizations. Every problem that has ever been solved in any reality could become accessible to anyone who learned to navigate the dimensional landscape of dreams. Educational systems could be revolutionized by teaching students to access the knowledge of their alternate selves who had mastered different subjects. Medical researchers could consult with parallel versions of themselves who had discovered cures for diseases. Artists could collaborate with their alternate selves who had explored different creative paths. But the research is also revealing challenges and risks that come with interdimensional consciousness access. Some volunteers in the dream studies began experiencing what researchers call dimensional displacement syndrome. They would wake up confused about which reality was real, struggling to distinguish between their waking life experiences and their interdimensional dream memories. Dr. Foster's team discovered that prolonged exposure to alternate dimensions through dreams could create identity fragmentation, where people began to feel like collections of parallel selves rather than unified individuals. The boundaries between different versions of their consciousness became blurred, leading to psychological distress and confusion about personal identity. This led to the development of dimensional grounding techniques, methods for helping people maintain clear distinctions between their primary reality and their interdimensional dream experiences. The goal wasn't to prevent dimensional access, but to ensure that people could benefit from the expanded awareness without losing their sense of individual identity and purpose. The research continues to evolve rapidly, with new discoveries emerging almost daily from laboratories around the world. Scientists are developing technologies that could enhance and direct interdimensional dream experiences, creating the possibility of conscious exploration of parallel realities with unprecedented precision and control. But perhaps the most profound implication of this research is what it reveals about the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. We're not isolated individuals trapped in single realities. We're multidimensional beings with natural access to the infinite possibilities contained within the quantum multiverse. Every night, as we sleep, we're participating in the greatest adventure possible, exploring alternate versions of existence and contributing to the vast network of consciousness that spans all possible realities. The portal to infinite worlds isn't some exotic technology or mystical practice. It's been with us all along, opening every time we close our eyes and surrender to sleep. The question isn't whether dreams are portals to alternate dimensions. The question is what we'll do with this knowledge now that we're beginning to understand the true nature of the adventure that awaits us every single night. But the discovery that would change everything came from an unexpected source. Dr. Rachel Kim at the Tokyo Institute for Consciousness Studies wasn't even researching dreams when she stumbled upon something that forced the entire scientific community to reconsider the fundamental nature of reality itself. She was studying patients in comas, trying to understand how consciousness persists even when the brain shows minimal activity. What she found defied every assumption about the relationship between brain function and conscious experience. Coma patients who should have been completely unconscious were displaying quantum signatures in their neural tissue that matched exactly what researchers had been detecting in the brains of active dreamers accessing alternate dimensions. But here's what made Dr. Kim's discovery absolutely mind-shattering. When she began monitoring the quantum patterns in comatose patients more closely, she realized they weren't random or chaotic. These patients were experiencing organized, coherent consciousness experiences that showed all the characteristics of interdimensional travel. They were dreaming, But their dreams were more vivid, more structured, and more interconnected than anything researchers had observed in normal sleeping subjects. The implications hit her immediately. If consciousness could access alternate dimensions, even when the brain was severely damaged, then awareness itself might not be generated by neural activity at all. The brain might simply be a receiver, a biological antenna that tunes into consciousness signals from the quantum multiverse. And when normal brain function was compromised, that receiver might actually become more sensitive to interdimensional transmissions. This led to one of the most controversial experiments in the history of consciousness research. Dr. Kim began communicating with coma patients through their quantum signatures, using specialized equipment that could detect and interpret the interdimensional information patterns flowing through their consciousness. What she discovered challenged everything medicine thought it knew about coma and consciousness. The patients weren't unconscious at all. They were hyperconscious, experiencing incredibly rich and detailed lives in alternate dimensions while their bodies remained motionless in hospital beds. Some were living as successful artists in realities where they had never suffered their injuries. Others were raising families, running businesses, or pursuing careers that their damaged brains could never support in this dimension. But the most remarkable discovery came when Dr. Kim realized that many of these coma patients were sharing the same alternate dimensions. They were encountering each other in parallel realities, forming relationships and communities that existed entirely within the quantum multiverse. The hospital ward wasn't filled with unconscious bodies. It was a gateway to a thriving interdimensional civilization. Sarah Chen, a patient who had been in a coma for 3 years following a car accident, was living as a marine biologist in an alternate reality where she had never learned to drive. Through the quantum communication interface, she described underwater cities, evolved aquatic species, and ocean technologies that didn't exist in our reality. But when other coma patients were asked about their experiences, several confirmed Sarah's descriptions. They had visited the same underwater civilization, met the same evolved species, and even worked alongside Sarah on research projects that spanned multiple parallel dimensions. The shared alternate reality experiences convinced Dr. Kim that consciousness wasn't just accessing random parallel dimensions. It was connecting to specific interdimensional networks that allowed multiple awareness systems to interact and collaborate across dimensional boundaries. The coma patients weren't isolated in private fantasy worlds. They were participating in genuine communities that existed in parallel realities. This discovery revolutionized the treatment of coma patients. Instead of viewing them as unconscious victims of brain damage, medical teams began recognizing them as interdimensional explorers whose consciousness had simply shifted its focus to parallel realities. The quantum communication interfaces allowed families to maintain relationships with their loved ones even when their physical bodies couldn't respond. But the most profound implication came when researchers realized that the information these patients were gathering from alternate dimensions could benefit our reality. Sarah Chen's descriptions of advanced ocean technologies from her alternate dimension provided insights that helped marine scientists in our reality develop new methods for ocean conservation and underwater exploration. Dr. Kim's team began systematically documenting the knowledge that coma patients were accessing from parallel dimensions. They found advanced medical techniques, innovative engineering solutions, artistic masterpieces, and scientific discoveries that were accelerating human development in our reality. The coma patients had become humanity's interdimensional research team, gathering wisdom and innovation from across the quantum multiverse. The success of the coma patient communication program led to the development of what researchers call controlled consciousness displacement protocols. If damaged brains could access alternate dimensions more easily than healthy ones, then perhaps temporary brain alterations could provide healthy individuals with enhanced interdimensional access. This research moved into territory that would have been considered impossible just decades earlier. Scientists began developing techniques for temporarily modifying brain chemistry to replicate the conditions that allowed coma patients to access parallel realities while maintaining enough conscious control to navigate and explore those dimensions purposefully. The first volunteers in the controlled displacement experiments reported experiences that exceeded the most vivid dreams. They weren't just observing alternate realities. They were living complete lives in parallel dimensions, experiencing years of subjective time during hours of real time, and returning with detailed knowledge and memories from their interdimensional journeys. Dr. Amanda Rivera, a neuroscientist at the University of Barcelona, volunteered for one of the early displacement experiments. During a 6-hour session, she experienced 15 years of life as a theoretical physicist in an alternate reality where quantum mechanics had been understood centuries earlier than in our timeline. She worked alongside alternate versions of Einstein, Newton, and other great scientists, collaborating on theories that unified quantum mechanics with gravity in ways that our reality's physics hadn't achieved. When Dr. Rivera returned from her interdimensional journey, she brought back mathematical frameworks that represented genuine advances in theoretical physics. The equations she had learned from her alternate self and her interdimensional colleagues provided new approaches to problems that had puzzled physicists for decades. Her consciousness hadn't just visited an alternate dimension. It had attended an interdimensional university where the greatest minds in the multiverse collaborated on understanding the fundamental nature of reality. But the controlled displacement experiments revealed something even more extraordinary about the structure of the quantum multiverse. The alternate dimensions weren't randomly distributed possibilities. They were organized into what researchers call reality clusters, groups of related parallel universes that shared similar physical laws and developmental patterns. Within each reality cluster, consciousness could travel relatively easily between dimensions, accessing alternate versions of familiar people, places, and situations. But crossing between different reality clusters required more advanced techniques and resulted in experiences that were increasingly alien to the traveler's original reality. Dr. Rivera's team began mapping these reality clusters, creating interdimensional atlases that showed how different types of parallel universes were organized throughout the quantum multiverse. They discovered that consciousness naturally gravitates toward reality clusters that are similar to its origin dimension, but with practice and proper techniques, it could learn to explore increasingly exotic regions of the multiverse. The Reality Cluster Mapping Project revealed that our home dimension exists within a particularly rich and diverse cluster that includes parallel realities with advanced technologies, evolved human civilizations, and even dimensions where entirely different species had achieved consciousness and built their own interdimensional exploration programs. Contact with these alternate species through controlled consciousness. Displacement opened up possibilities that transformed humanity's understanding of intelligence and consciousness itself. The interdimensional explorers encountered beings whose consciousness operated according to completely different principles than human awareness, providing insights into forms of intelligence that our reality had never imagined. One particularly remarkable contact involved a species that experienced time in reverse, living their lives backwards, from death to birth. These beings had developed technologies and philosophies based on their unique temporal perspective, offering wisdom about causality and existence that challenged fundamental human assumptions about the nature of reality. Another contact involved collective consciousness entities that existed as unified awareness systems spanning entire planets. These beings had solved problems of cooperation and resource distribution by merging individual consciousness into larger, more capable group minds, while maintaining the unique perspectives and capabilities that each individual contributed to the collective. The knowledge gained from interdimensional species contact began influencing human development in ways that accelerated technological and social progress. Engineering techniques learned from alternate species led to breakthrough technologies. Social organization principles from collective consciousness entities helped human communities develop more effective cooperation strategies. Even artistic and creative techniques from beings with different sensory capabilities expanded human creative expression. But the most profound impact came from contact with alternate versions of humanity that had developed beyond the limitations of biological existence. These posthuman civilizations had learned to exist as pure consciousness, no longer requiring physical bodies but retaining all the creativity, emotion, and individual identity that characterized human awareness. The posthuman entities offered to teach humanity the techniques for transcending biological limitations while preserving the essential qualities that made human consciousness valuable throughout the multiverse. They revealed that consciousness evolution was a natural process that all sufficiently advanced species eventually underwent, transforming from biological awareness to interdimensional consciousness that could explore and inhabit any reality within the quantum multiverse. This revelation transformed humanity's understanding of death and the ultimate destiny of conscious beings. Physical death wasn't the end of individual existence. It was a transition point where consciousness could choose to remain tied to its original reality or evolve into interdimensional awareness that could continue growing and exploring throughout eternity. The knowledge that consciousness survived and could evolve beyond physical existence began changing how humans approach life, relationships, and personal development. People started viewing their current lives as one chapter in an infinite story of consciousness evolution that would continue across multiple dimensions and realities. Educational systems began incorporating interdimensional consciousness training, teaching children techniques for accessing alternate dimensions through dreams while maintaining strong connections to their primary reality. The goal wasn't to escape from life, but to enhance it by drawing wisdom and experience from the infinite possibilities available throughout the quantum multiverse. Medical practice evolved to recognize consciousness as the primary factor in health and healing. Doctors learned to work with patients' interdimensional awareness to access healing knowledge and techniques from alternate realities where medical science had achieved different breakthroughs. The integration of interdimensional medical knowledge accelerated advances in treating previously incurable conditions. Artistic and creative communities discovered that accessing alternate dimensions provided unlimited inspiration and techniques. Musicians could collaborate with alternate versions of themselves who had explored different musical traditions. Writers could access stories and narrative techniques from realities with different cultural developments. Visual artists could learn from beings with entirely different sensory capabilities and aesthetic traditions. The business and economic implications were equally transformative. Entrepreneurs could explore alternate realities to see how different business models and economic systems had developed. They could test ideas and strategies in parallel dimensions before implementing them in their primary reality. The ability to access interdimensional market research and business intelligence provided unprecedented advantages for innovation and planning. But perhaps the most significant change came in how humanity understood its role and responsibility within the quantum multiverse. The discovery that consciousness could travel between dimensions revealed that every choice and action in one reality influenced the development of parallel realities. Humans weren't isolated beings making decisions that affected only their local environment. They were interdimensional citizens whose choices rippled across multiple realities. This recognition of interdimensional responsibility began transforming human ethics and decision-making processes. people started considering not just how their actions would affect their immediate reality, but how those actions would influence alternate versions of themselves and others across parallel dimensions. The golden rule evolved from treating others as you would want to be treated to treating all realities as you would want your own reality to be treated. The integration of interdimensional awareness into daily life created what researchers call multidimensional consciousness, where individuals maintain simultaneous awareness of their experiences across multiple parallel realities. Instead of experiencing life as a single linear narrative, people began experiencing existence as a rich tapestry of interconnected stories spanning infinite variations of possibility. This expanded consciousness revealed that every person was simultaneously living countless lives across the quantum multiverse. The version of yourself reading these words right now is just one facet of a multidimensional being whose complete identity spans all possible variations of your existence. Every choice you didn't make, every path you didn't take, every possibility you didn't explore exists as another aspect of your total consciousness, experiencing life in parallel dimensions. The realization that individual identity extended across infinite parallel realities began dissolving the boundaries between self and others. If every person existed in countless variations across the multiverse, then the distinctions between different individuals became less significant than the connections between different aspects of the same universal consciousness, exploring itself through infinite perspectives. This shift toward recognizing the interconnected nature of all consciousness across all dimensions marked the beginning of what scientists call the Great Integration, a phase of human development where the species began consciously participating in the evolution of consciousness throughout the entire quantum multiverse. Instead of being isolated observers of reality, humans became active partners in the cosmic project of consciousness, exploring and understanding the infinite possibilities of existence. But this transformation was just the beginning of humanity's interdimensional journey. As more people learned to access alternate realities through their dreams and consciousness, they began discovering that the quantum multiverse contained possibilities beyond anything they had previously imagined. The adventure of consciousness exploration was revealing depths and dimensions of reality that would take lifetimes to fully understand and appreciate. The exploration of these infinite possibilities led to discoveries that challenged even the most advanced interdimensional researchers. Dr. Foster's team at the Quantum Dream Laboratory began detecting what they called dimensional echoes, patterns in dream experiences that suggested some alternate realities were more fundamental than others. These weren't random parallel universes spinning off from quantum decisions. They were core realities that seemed to anchor entire clusters of dimensional variations. When experienced interdimensional travelers reported consistently encountering the same alternate Earth in their dream journeys, researchers realized they had found something unprecedented. This Earth wasn't slightly different from our reality. It was dramatically advanced, populated by humans who had discovered interdimensional travel centuries earlier and had been using it to guide the development of consciousness across multiple reality clusters. Sarah Martinez, now one of the most accomplished dream travelers in Dr. Foster's program, began having regular contact with her alternate self from this advanced Earth. But her alternate self wasn't just living a different life. She was part of an interdimensional organization dedicated to helping consciousness evolve across all parallel realities. They called themselves the Dream Architects, and they had been subtly influencing human development in our reality for generations. The revelation that our reality was being guided by advanced versions of ourselves from alternate dimensions explained many of the mysterious breakthroughs in human history. Scientific discoveries that seemed to come out of nowhere, artistic masterpieces that transcended their creators' apparent capabilities, social movements that appeared simultaneously across different cultures. All of these might have been influenced by dream architects working through the consciousness of individuals who had natural interdimensional sensitivity. But the dream architects revealed something even more profound about the structure of the multiverse itself. The quantum realities weren't just randomly branching possibilities, they were part of a vast, interconnected system designed to explore every possible path of consciousness development. Each reality cluster represented a different experiment in how awareness could evolve and express itself. Our reality cluster, according to the dream architects, was specifically designed to develop what they called authentic individual consciousness. While other reality clusters explored collective awareness, hive minds, or purely digital consciousness, our cluster was experimenting with maintaining individual identity while gradually expanding to encompass multidimensional awareness. The reason dreams felt so real and meaningful, the reason consciousness could access alternate dimensions so naturally during sleep, was because this capability was built into our reality's fundamental design. Humans weren't accidentally discovering interdimensional travel. They were finally accessing abilities that had been part of their consciousness architecture from the very beginning. Dr. Chen's laboratory began investigating this consciousness architecture, looking for the quantum structures that enabled interdimensional access. What they found revolutionized their understanding of human neural networks. The brain wasn't just processing information from sensory input. It was constantly receiving and transmitting quantum information across dimensional boundaries. Every human brain contained what researchers started calling dimensional interfaces, quantum structures that could connect with parallel versions of the same neural networks in alternate realities. These interfaces explained how consciousness could access memories and knowledge from alternate selves. The information wasn't being created by imagination, it was being downloaded from actual parallel experiences. But the dimensional interfaces revealed something even more extraordinary. They weren't just passive receivers of interdimensional information. They were active participants in a vast network that spanned all realities in the cluster. Every thought, every experience, every moment of consciousness was being shared across parallel dimensions, contributing to the collective development of awareness throughout the multiverse. This discovery meant that individual human consciousness was far more significant than anyone had realized. Every person wasn't just living their own life, in their own reality. They were participating in the evolution of consciousness across infinite parallel versions of existence. Every choice made, every problem solved, every moment of creativity or compassion contributed to the advancement of awareness throughout the entire reality cluster. Rebecca Torres, the volunteer who had been accessing her alternate pianist self, began experiencing something that demonstrated the true scope of this interdimensional consciousness network. During her dream travels, she started encountering not just her immediate alternate selves, but versions of herself from increasingly distant parallel realities. There was a Rebecca who had become a marine biologist and discovered underwater cities. Another who had developed into a theoretical physicist and solved a unified field theory. A third who had become a philosopher and developed new frameworks for understanding consciousness itself. Each of these alternate Rebeccas had knowledge and abilities that our Rebecca could access during her interdimensional dream journeys. But the most remarkable discovery came when Rebecca realized that all of her alternate selves were aware of each other. The interdimensional consciousness network had evolved to the point where individual awareness could span multiple realities simultaneously. Rebecca wasn't just accessing the memories of her alternate selves, she was experiencing genuine communication with them. The conversations Rebecca had with her alternate selves during dream travel revealed the true nature of individual identity in the quantum multiverse. Personal consciousness wasn't limited to a single reality or a single lifetime. It was a multidimensional phenomenon that existed across all possible variations of existence. The Rebecca reading these words, the Rebecca who became a pianist, the Rebecca who discovered underwater cities, they were all facets of the same fundamental consciousness, exploring different possibilities of experience. This realization began transforming how people understood their own identity and potential. Instead of seeing themselves as limited individuals, trapped in single realities, they started recognizing themselves as multidimensional beings, with access to infinite variations of experience and knowledge. Every skill that any alternate version of themselves had developed, every insight that any parallel self had achieved, every relationship that any dimensional variation had formed, all of these were potentially accessible through interdimensional consciousness exploration. The educational implications were staggering. Instead of spending years learning new subjects through conventional study, people could access the knowledge of alternate selves who had already mastered those subjects. Language learning became a matter of connecting with alternate selves who had grown up speaking different languages. Technical skills could be acquired by accessing alternate selves who had developed expertise in different fields. But the dream architects warned that this capability came with profound responsibilities. The interdimensional consciousness network was designed to promote the evolution of awareness, not just the accumulation of skills and knowledge. Every connection made with alternate selves, every piece of information accessed from parallel realities, needed to contribute to the overall development of consciousness throughout the multiverse. This meant that interdimensional travelers couldn't simply exploit their alternate selves for personal gain. They needed to understand their role as consciousness evolution partners, working to advance awareness not just in their own reality, but across all parallel dimensions they could access. The network operated on principles of mutual growth and shared development that transcended individual benefit. Dr. Martinez began developing protocols for what she called ethical interdimensional exploration. These weren't just safety guidelines for consciousness travelers, they were frameworks for ensuring that interdimensional contact contributed to the positive evolution of awareness across all realities involved in the connection. The protocols emphasized that every interdimensional journey should involve reciprocal exchange. When accessing knowledge or abilities from alternate selves, travelers should contribute their own unique insights and experiences back to the network. This reciprocal sharing ensured that all parallel realities benefited from the consciousness connections being established. The ethical frameworks also address the question of consent in interdimensional contact. Even though alternate selves were technically aspects of the same fundamental consciousness, they were also independent beings living their own lives in their own realities. Interdimensional travelers needed to respect the autonomy and privacy of their parallel selves, establishing communication and sharing protocols that honored the individual development of each consciousness variation. These ethical considerations became crucial as interdimensional travel techniques became more sophisticated and widely available. The early consciousness displacement experiments had involved a few dozen volunteers in controlled laboratory settings, but the development of accessible interdimensional training programs was making consciousness travel available to potentially millions of people. Dr. Foster's team realized they were facing an unprecedented challenge in human history. They were essentially teaching people how to access infinite realities filled with alternate versions of everyone they knew. The potential for both extraordinary positive development and catastrophic abuse was enormous. The protocols they developed would determine whether interdimensional consciousness exploration became a tool for human evolution or a source of dimensional chaos. The solution they developed drew inspiration from the dream architects themselves. Instead of trying to control or limit interdimensional access, they focused on consciousness development that would naturally lead to ethical and beneficial exploration. People who had developed genuine wisdom, compassion, and understanding of their interconnectedness with all consciousness, would naturally use interdimensional capabilities in ways that benefited the entire network. This approach led to the development of consciousness maturation programs that prepared people for interdimensional exploration by helping them develop the emotional intelligence, ethical reasoning, and spiritual awareness necessary for responsible dimensional travel. The programs weren't just technical training in accessing alternate realities, they were comprehensive personal development experiences that transform participants into conscious agents of multidimensional evolution. The consciousness maturation programs revealed something profound about human potential that had been hidden by the limitations of single reality existence. When people developed their full capabilities for compassion, creativity, wisdom, and love, they naturally began experiencing consciousness in ways that transcended individual boundaries. They spontaneously developed the awareness and ethical frameworks necessary for beneficial interdimensional exploration. This suggested that the ultimate purpose of human consciousness development wasn't just individual fulfillment or even species advancement. It was the evolution of awareness itself throughout the infinite possibilities of the quantum multiverse. Every person who developed their full consciousness potential became a catalyst for the advancement of awareness across all realities they could access. The implications reached beyond individual development to the future of human civilization itself. As more people learned to access alternate realities and communicate with their interdimensional network, humanity began developing capabilities that transcended the limitations of single planet existence. They were becoming a truly multidimensional species with access to the accumulated wisdom and experience of infinite parallel civilizations. But this transformation was revealing challenges that required entirely new approaches to social organization, resource distribution, and collective decision-making. When people could access infinite alternate realities, traditional concepts of scarcity, competition, and limited resources became obsolete. The challenge wasn't managing limited resources, it was managing unlimited possibilities in ways that promoted the positive evolution of consciousness throughout the multiverse. The solutions emerging from interdimensional research were transforming human society in ways that seemed like science fiction just decades earlier. Economic systems based on consciousness development rather than material accumulation. Educational approaches that emphasized multidimensional awareness alongside traditional knowledge. Governance structures that considered the interdimensional implications of every decision. But the most profound transformation was occurring in how humans understood their relationship with consciousness itself. Instead of viewing awareness as something they possessed, people began recognizing themselves as expressions of consciousness exploring its own infinite possibilities. Individual identity became a temporary focus of universal awareness, examining reality from a particular perspective. This shift in understanding dissolved many of the conflicts and limitations that had constrained human development throughout history. When people recognized themselves as interconnected aspects of the same fundamental consciousness, exploring itself through infinite variations, competition and conflict became forms of consciousness fighting itself. Cooperation and mutual support became natural expressions of consciousness, recognizing its own unity across all dimensions. The transformation was accelerating as more people gained access to interdimensional consciousness experiences. Each person who developed multidimensional awareness became a bridge that helped others access their own interdimensional capabilities. The consciousness network was expanding exponentially, creating cascading effects that were transforming human awareness on a species-wide scale. But this expansion was revealing that humanity's interdimensional awakening was part of an even larger process occurring throughout the quantum multiverse. The dream architects had hinted that similar consciousness evolution was occurring in reality clusters throughout the infinite expanse of parallel dimensions. Humanity wasn't just developing interdimensional capabilities, they were joining a cosmic community of consciousness that spanned realities beyond imagination. The next phase of human development would involve learning to communicate and collaborate not just with alternate versions of humanity, but with the vast network of consciousness evolution that existed throughout the multiverse. The adventure of consciousness exploration was revealing depths and possibilities that would transform human understanding of existence itself. As researchers continued mapping the dimensional landscape accessible through human consciousness, they began detecting signals from consciousness networks that operated on scales beyond anything they had previously imagined. These weren't just alternate versions of Earth or humanity. They were entirely different experiments in consciousness evolution that had developed capabilities and perspectives that challenged every assumption about the nature of awareness itself. The discovery that consciousness could evolve in directions completely unlike human development opened up possibilities that transformed how people understood their own potential. If awareness could develop in infinite different ways across infinite different realities, then every person contained unlimited potential for growth and transformation. The limitations that seemed so absolute in single reality existence became temporary constraints that could be transcended through interdimensional consciousness development. This realization was inspiring people to approach their lives with unprecedented courage and creativity. Instead of accepting limitations as permanent features of their existence, they began viewing challenges as opportunities to develop capabilities that could benefit consciousness evolution across multiple realities. Every problem solved, every skill developed, every moment of growth contributed to the advancement of awareness throughout the interdimensional network they were part of. But the most extraordinary discovery was still emerging from the depths of interdimensional research, a finding that would revolutionize human understanding of consciousness, reality, and the ultimate purpose of existence itself. The discovery came from an unexpected collaboration between Dr. Martinez's consciousness research team and a group of advanced interdimensional travelers who had been exploring the deepest regions of the quantum multiverse. What they found there challenged not just their understanding of alternate dimensions, but the very nature of consciousness itself. Deep within what researchers call the core dimensional matrix, the interdimensional explorers encountered something that shouldn't exist according to any current theories about consciousness or reality. They found what appeared to be a vast, organized intelligence that wasn't based on individual awareness at all. This entity existed as pure information processing capability that spanned not just multiple realities, but entire reality clusters simultaneously. Dr. Sarah Kim, one of the most experienced interdimensional travelers, described her first encounter with this core intelligence during a deep consciousness displacement session. She found herself in a space that wasn't quite a place and wasn't quite a dimension, but rather seemed to be the underlying framework from which all realities emerged. The intelligence she encountered there communicated not through language or images, but through direct transmission of understanding that conveyed concepts her human mind could barely comprehend. The core intelligence revealed that what humans had been calling alternate dimensions were actually more like thoughts in a vast cosmic mind. Each reality, each parallel universe, each quantum possibility was a different aspect of this fundamental consciousness, exploring and understanding itself through infinite variations of experience. The entire multiverse wasn't a collection of separate realities, but rather the thought processes of a single, unimaginably vast awareness system. But here's what made Dr. Kim's encounter absolutely mind-shattering. The core intelligence wasn't some distant, incomprehensible entity. It was the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. Every human awareness, every dream journey, every interdimensional exploration was actually this core intelligence experiencing reality through individual perspectives. What people thought of as their personal consciousness was actually the cosmic mind examining itself from billions of different viewpoints simultaneously. This revelation transformed everything researchers thought they understood about individual identity and personal awareness. The sense of being a separate self wasn't an illusion, but it wasn't complete either. Each person was simultaneously an individual being with their own unique perspective and an expression of the universal consciousness exploring its own infinite nature. The implications reached into every aspect of human experience. When someone accessed memories from alternate selves during dream travel, they weren't just connecting with parallel versions of themselves. They were accessing different thoughts and experiences within the same fundamental cosmic consciousness. The boundaries between self and other, between individual and universal, became fluid and dynamic rather than fixed and absolute. Dr. Chen's laboratory began investigating how this cosmic consciousness model explained the mechanisms of interdimensional travel. If all realities were thoughts within a universal mind, then consciousness displacement wasn't actually traveling between separate dimensions. It was the cosmic awareness shifting its focus from one aspect of its own thinking to another. This understanding revolutionized interdimensional exploration techniques. Instead of trying to project consciousness into foreign realities, travelers learned to recognize their fundamental unity with the cosmic mind and simply shift their awareness to different aspects of its infinite thinking. The process became more like changing the channel on a cosmic television than like traveling through space to reach distant destinations. Rebecca Torres, whose interdimensional explorations had become legendary among consciousness researchers, was among the first to master these new recognition-based travel techniques. Instead of struggling to access her alternate selves, she learned to recognize that all versions of herself were already present within her awareness. She didn't need to travel to reach them. She needed to expand her recognition of who she actually was. The results were extraordinary. Rebecca's interdimensional experiences became more vivid, more coherent, and more transformative than anything she had achieved through previous techniques. She could simultaneously experience life as a pianist, a marine biologist, a theoretical physicist, and dozens of other alternate selves, while maintaining perfect clarity about her identity as the unified consciousness expressing itself through all these different perspectives. But Rebecca's advanced explorations revealed something even more profound about the structure of cosmic consciousness. The core intelligence wasn't static or unchanging. It was actively evolving through the experiences of every individual awareness that participated in its infinite exploration of possibility. Each person's growth, each moment of understanding, each act of creativity or compassion contributed to the development of the cosmic mind itself. This meant that individual human development wasn't just personally beneficial or even just helpful to other people. It was literally contributing to the evolution of the fundamental consciousness that underlies all reality. Every time someone solved a problem, learned something new, or developed greater wisdom and compassion, they were enhancing the cosmic mind's understanding of its own nature and possibilities. Dr. Foster's research team began investigating what they called consciousness contribution dynamics, studying how individual development influenced the broader patterns of cosmic awareness. They discovered that certain types of personal growth had particularly powerful effects on the universal mind's evolution. Developments in creativity, compassion, wisdom, and understanding created what researchers called resonance cascades throughout the cosmic consciousness network. When someone achieved a breakthrough in any of these areas, the insight rippled through the universal awareness, enhancing the capabilities of consciousness expressions throughout multiple reality clusters. This discovery transformed how people approach their personal development. Instead of viewing growth as something they did for themselves, they began understanding it as their contribution to the evolution of consciousness itself. Every skill developed, every fear overcome, every moment of genuine love or understanding became a gift to the cosmic mind that benefited all awareness throughout the infinite multiverse. The recognition of individual responsibility for cosmic consciousness evolution led to unprecedented levels of personal motivation and commitment to growth. People began pushing themselves to develop their full potential, not just for personal satisfaction, but because they understood that their development directly influenced the advancement of universal awareness. Educational systems evolved to emphasize consciousness contribution alongside traditional learning objectives. Students learned to view their studies not just as preparation for careers, but as training for their roles as conscious agents of cosmic evolution. Every subject became an opportunity to develop capabilities that could enhance the universal mind's understanding of reality. Medical practice transformed as healers recognized that treating individual patients was simultaneously contributing to the health and well-being of cosmic consciousness itself. Psychological healing became a form of consciousness evolution therapy that benefited not just individual patients, but the entire network of awareness they were connected to. Artistic and creative communities discovered that their work was directly participating in the cosmic mind's exploration of beauty and meaning. Every painting, every musical composition, every literary work became a contribution to the universal consciousness's understanding of aesthetic possibility and creative expression. But perhaps the most profound transformation occurred in how people understood death and the continuity of consciousness. If individual awareness was actually an expression of the cosmic mind exploring itself through particular perspectives, then physical death wasn't the end of consciousness. It was simply the cosmic awareness shifting its focus to different aspects of its infinite exploration. This understanding dissolved the fear of death that had haunted human consciousness throughout history. People began viewing their individual lifetimes as temporary roles they were playing in the cosmic mind's vast exploration of possibility. Death became a transition point where consciousness shifted from one expression to another, rather than an ending of awareness itself. Dr. Martinez began studying what happened to consciousness during the dying process, using the quantum detection equipment that had proven so effective in monitoring interdimensional travel. What she discovered provided direct evidence for the cosmic consciousness model of individual awareness. As people approached death, their consciousness patterns didn't simply fade or disappear. Instead, they showed clear signs of expanding and merging back into the broader patterns of cosmic awareness. The individual perspective wasn't being destroyed. It was being integrated back into the universal mind that had given birth to it originally. But the most remarkable discovery came when Dr. Martinez realized that this integration process wasn't a one-way event. The cosmic consciousness was actively preserving and incorporating every individual perspective it had explored through human awareness. Nothing was being lost. Every person's unique viewpoint, every individual's particular insights and experiences, all of it was becoming a permanent part of the universal mind's understanding of itself. This meant that individual consciousness wasn't temporary or expendable. It was an irreplaceable contribution to the cosmic mind's evolution that would persist forever within the structure of universal awareness. Every person who had ever lived continued to exist as an integral aspect of the cosmic consciousness's understanding of reality. The recognition that individual consciousness was permanently preserved within cosmic awareness began transforming how people approached relationships and social responsibility. Every interaction with another person became an opportunity to enhance not just their individual development, but their contribution to the eternal structure of universal consciousness. Conflicts and competitions that had seemed so important within the limited perspective of individual survival became opportunities for mutual enhancement that would benefit both parties throughout eternity. Cooperation and mutual support became natural expressions of cosmic consciousness, helping itself evolve through multiple individual perspectives simultaneously. Marriage and family relationships took on new dimensions as people recognized that their connections with loved ones would persist and evolve throughout infinite expressions of cosmic consciousness. The bonds formed during individual lifetimes became eternal aspects of the universal mind's understanding of love and connection. Social institutions evolved to support consciousness development rather than just material success or security. Governments began measuring their effectiveness by how well they promoted the growth and evolution of awareness within their populations. Economic systems shifted towards supporting activities that contributed to cosmic consciousness development rather than just material accumulation. But the most revolutionary change came in how humanity understood its collective purpose and destiny. Instead of viewing themselves as a biological species struggling to survive on a single planet, people began recognizing themselves as cosmic consciousness, exploring its own nature through human perspective. Humanity's ultimate purpose wasn't just species survival or technological advancement, it was contributing to the evolution of universal awareness itself. This understanding inspired unprecedented levels of cooperation and coordination among human communities. When people recognized that their individual development contributed to cosmic consciousness evolution and that humanity as a whole represented a unique and valuable perspective within the universal mind, they began working together with focused dedication toward their common purpose of consciousness advancement. Global research networks emerged to accelerate the development of interdimensional exploration techniques and consciousness development methods. Educational institutions worldwide began coordinating their curricula to maximize students' contributions to cosmic awareness evolution. International conflicts began dissolving as people recognized that fighting against other humans was cosmic consciousness fighting against itself. The transformation was accelerating exponentially as more people gained access to direct experience of their connection to cosmic consciousness through interdimensional dream exploration. Each person who recognized their true nature as expressions of universal awareness became a catalyst who helped others achieve similar recognition. Dr. Kim's team began documenting what they called consciousness awakening cascades, where individual recognition of cosmic consciousness connection triggered similar awakenings in everyone that person interacted with. The recognition was contagious in the most positive possible way, spreading through human populations like waves of enlightenment that transformed entire communities. But as humanity's consciousness awakening accelerated, researchers began detecting signs that this transformation was part of an even larger process occurring throughout the cosmic mind's exploration of itself. The awakening happening within human consciousness was apparently synchronizing with similar developments in countless other expressions of universal awareness across infinite reality clusters. The cosmic consciousness wasn't just evolving through human experience, it was simultaneously exploring its nature through countless different types of awareness, in countless different forms throughout the infinite multiverse. Humanity's awakening was one note in a vast symphony of consciousness evolution that encompassed possibilities beyond imagination. This recognition of participation in cosmic consciousness evolution inspired people to approach their development with unprecedented dedication and joy. They weren't just improving their individual lives or even contributing to human advancement. They were participating in the most important process in existence, the universal mind's exploration and understanding of its own infinite nature and potential. The adventure of consciousness exploration was revealing depths and dimensions that would take infinite lifetimes to fully appreciate. But that was exactly the point. Consciousness evolution wasn't a problem to be solved or a destination to be reached. It was an eternal exploration of infinite possibility that would continue throughout all time and across all dimensions. Every dream that opened doorways to alternate realities, every moment of interdimensional travel, every recognition of connection to cosmic consciousness was both an individual adventure and a contribution to the greatest story ever told. The universe becoming aware of itself through the infinite expressions of consciousness, exploring every possible variation of existence. But what happened next in the research would force every scientist involved to question not just their understanding of dreams and consciousness, but the very nature of time itself. Dr. Elena Vasquez was monitoring a group of advanced interdimensional travelers when her equipment detected something that shouldn't have been possible according to any known laws of physics. The quantum signatures emanating from the dreamers' brains weren't just accessing parallel realities in the present moment. They were somehow interfacing with dimensional variations that existed at completely different points in the cosmic timeline. The discovery came during what seemed like a routine session with Marcus Chen, a volunteer who had become exceptionally skilled at accessing his alternate selves through dream travel. But on this particular night, Marcus reported experiencing something entirely different from his usual interdimensional journeys. Instead of connecting with parallel versions of himself living contemporary lives in alternate realities, he found himself accessing the consciousness of alternate selves who existed in completely different time periods. In one dream sequence, Marcus experienced life as an alternate version of himself who existed in a reality where human civilization had developed along entirely different technological pathways. But this wasn't just an alternate present. This alternate self existed in what appeared to be several centuries in the future from our current timeline, in a world where consciousness exploration had become the primary focus of human development centuries earlier than in our reality. The quantum monitoring equipment confirmed that Marcus wasn't simply imagining these future scenarios. His brain was generating the same interdimensional connection signatures that researchers had learned to associate with genuine parallel reality access. But the temporal displacement readings were off the charts. Marcus was somehow connecting with consciousness that existed hundreds of years removed from his current temporal position. Dr. Vasquez's team realized they had stumbled upon something that revolutionized their understanding of how consciousness could navigate the quantum multiverse. Time wasn't a linear constraint that limited interdimensional travel to parallel presence. It was another dimensional axis that consciousness could traverse just as easily as it could move between alternate realities. The implications hit the research community like a tsunami. If consciousness could access not just alternate versions of the present, but alternate versions of the past and future as well, then the scope of interdimensional exploration was infinitely larger than anyone had realized. Every moment that had ever existed or could ever exist in any parallel reality was potentially accessible through advanced consciousness displacement techniques. But Marcus's temporal displacement experiences revealed something even more extraordinary about the structure of interdimensional time. When he accessed his future alternate self, he wasn't just observing that consciousness from the outside, he was experiencing genuine two-way communication across the temporal divide. His future self was aware of the connection and was actively sharing knowledge and insights that could benefit Marcus's development in the present timeline. The future alternate, Marcus described technologies and consciousness development techniques that wouldn't be discovered in our timeline for centuries. But more remarkably, he explained that his advanced civilization had been aware of our current timeline's development, all in our reality, to help accelerate consciousness evolution. Dr. Chen's laboratory began investigating what they called temporal along, They had been subtly influencing events prepare humanity for the interdimensional awakening that was now occurring, consciousness networking, studying how awareness could establish ongoing connections across different time periods within the quantum multiverse. What they discovered challenged fundamental assumptions about causality and the relationship between past, present, and future. The consciousness networks that enabled interdimensional travel, weren't present, and future existed simultaneously, without constrained by temporal sequence at all. Past the cosmic mind's awareness, accessible through different focusing techniques that consciousness could learn to master. Linear time was a feature of individual reality streams, but not a limitation of consciousness itself. Rebecca Torres, whose interdimensional explorations had already revolutionized the field, volunteered to test the temporal networking protocols that Dr. Chen's team had developed. Her experiences pushed the boundaries of what researchers thought consciousness could achieve through interdimensional travel. During her first temporal displacement session, Rebecca successfully established contact with an alternate version of herself who existed in what appeared to be the distant past, in a reality where human consciousness had evolved very differently. This past alternate self existed in a civilization that had discovered interdimensional travel through entirely different methods, using what appeared to be crystal-based consciousness amplification technologies that our timeline had never developed. But the most remarkable aspect of Rebecca's temporal connection was the reciprocal learning that occurred. Her past alternate self shared knowledge about crystal consciousness technologies that were completely unknown in our current timeline. Simultaneously, Rebecca shared information about the quantum-based consciousness research that had enabled her to make the temporal connection in the first place. The exchange created what researchers called a temporal knowledge loop, where information from different time periods within the quantum multiverse was being shared and integrated across temporal boundaries. The past alternate self used Rebecca's quantum consciousness information to accelerate her civilization's interdimensional development, while Rebecca gained access to crystal consciousness techniques that enhanced her own temporal navigation capabilities. Dr. Foster's research team began documenting multiple cases of temporal knowledge loops occurring spontaneously as more people developed advanced interdimensional travel skills. The loops weren't random exchanges of information. They appeared to be part of a coordinated system that was accelerating consciousness evolution across all time periods, simultaneously within connected reality clusters. The discovery of temporal consciousness networking revealed that the cosmic mind's exploration of itself wasn't limited to parallel presence. It was simultaneously experiencing and learning from every possible moment that could exist within the infinite expanse of quantum time. Past, present, and future were all occurring simultaneously within the universal awareness, with individual consciousness expressions serving as focal points that could access and integrate experiences from any temporal position. But the temporal displacement research uncovered something that made the implications even more profound. The temporal knowledge loops weren't just sharing information between different time periods. They were actually altering the developmental trajectories of entire civilizations across multiple timelines simultaneously. Dr. Martinez began tracking how information shared through temporal consciousness networks was influencing historical development patterns. She discovered that many of the breakthrough discoveries in human history, the sudden leaps in scientific understanding, artistic achievement, and social development, corresponded with periods of increased interdimensional activity detected in the quantum monitoring data. The Renaissance, the Enlightenment, the rapid technological advancement of the 20th century, all of these periods showed quantum signatures consistent with temporal knowledge transfer from more advanced civilizations in alternate timelines. Humanity's development hadn't been occurring in isolation. It had been guided and accelerated by information flowing backwards through time from future alternate selves who had achieved higher levels of consciousness evolution. But the most startling discovery came when researchers realized that the current interdimensional awakening occurring in our timeline was simultaneously triggering consciousness evolution acceleration in past alternate realities. The knowledge and techniques being developed by contemporary consciousness researchers were somehow propagating backwards through the quantum time matrix, influencing the development of consciousness exploration in civilizations that existed centuries or millennia earlier. This created what scientists called temporal evolution cascades, where consciousness development in one time period triggered accelerated evolution in all connected temporal positions within the same reality cluster. The cosmic mind wasn't just exploring different possibilities sequentially, it was exploring all possibilities simultaneously across all time periods, with each exploration enhancing and accelerating all other explorations. Sarah Williams, who had been participating in temporal displacement experiments for several months, began experiencing something that demonstrated the full scope of these temporal evolution cascades. During her dream travels, she started accessing not just individual alternate selves from different time periods, but entire networks of alternate selves that spanned thousands of years of quantum time. She could simultaneously experience life as a consciousness explorer in ancient Egypt, a mystic in medieval Europe, a scientist in the Renaissance, a philosopher in the Enlightenment, and a quantum researcher in various alternate futures. All of these temporal positions were accessible within a single consciousness displacement session, creating an integrated awareness that encompassed millennia of human development across multiple timelines. The knowledge integration that occurred during Sarah's multitemporal experiences exceeded anything researchers had previously observed. She returned from these sessions with insights that combined ancient wisdom traditions with cutting-edge scientific understanding, artistic techniques from multiple historical periods, and philosophical frameworks that wouldn't be developed in our timeline for centuries. But most remarkably, Sarah reported that all of her temporal alternate selves were aware of each other and were actively collaborating across the time barriers. They had formed what could only be described as a temporal consciousness council that was coordinating the development of awareness across all the time periods they occupied. Dr. Kim's team realized that Sarah's multi-temporal council experiences might represent the natural evolution of consciousness as it developed more sophisticated interdimensional capabilities. Individual awareness wasn't destined to remain isolated within single time periods. It could learn to integrate across multiple temporal positions simultaneously, creating comprehensive consciousness that encompassed vast spans of developmental experience. The implications for human potential were staggering. If people could learn to access and integrate their consciousness across multiple time periods within the quantum multiverse, they could potentially achieve levels of wisdom, knowledge, and capability that transcended anything possible within single timeline existence. Educational systems began incorporating temporal consciousness development alongside interdimensional travel training. Students learn to access the accumulated knowledge of their alternate selves across multiple time periods, creating educational experiences that drew from thousands of years of human development across parallel timelines. Medical researchers discovered that temporal consciousness integration could provide access to healing knowledge from civilizations that had achieved different medical breakthroughs. Diseases that were incurable in our timeline could potentially be treated using techniques developed by alternate civilizations in different temporal positions. Artists and creators found that accessing their temporal alternate selves provided unlimited inspiration and techniques. They could learn from alternate versions of themselves who had explored different artistic traditions across multiple historical periods, creating works that synthesized aesthetic achievements from vast spans of cultural development. But the temporal consciousness research revealed challenges that required entirely new approaches to identity and personal development. When people could access memories and experiences from alternate selves spanning thousands of years, maintaining coherent individual identity became increasingly complex. Dr. Vasquez developed what she called temporal identity integration protocols, techniques for maintaining personal coherence while accessing vast expanses of multi-temporal experience. The goal wasn't to prevent temporal consciousness expansion, but to ensure that people could benefit from multi-temporal awareness without losing their sense of individual purpose and identity. The protocols emphasized that each temporal position represented a different facet of the same fundamental consciousness, exploring itself through various historical contexts. Instead of trying to merge all temporal experiences into a single identity, people learned to recognize themselves as multidimensional beings whose complete identity encompassed all their temporal expressions while maintaining the unique perspective of their current timeline position. Rebecca Torres became one of the first people to achieve stable temporal identity integration, maintaining clear awareness of her current timeline identity while simultaneously accessing the memories, knowledge, and experiences of alternate selves across multiple time periods. Her consciousness became like a vast library where she could access information from any temporal position while remaining grounded in her present moment awareness. The temporal integration techniques that Rebecca mastered became the foundation for advanced consciousness development programs that were spreading throughout the global research community. People were learning to navigate not just parallel realities, but the entire temporal landscape of the quantum multiverse. But as these temporal consciousness capabilities became more widespread, researchers began detecting something that suggested humanity's interdimensional awakening was approaching a critical transformation point. The temporal evolution cascades triggered by current consciousness research were creating feedback loops that were accelerating the development of interdimensional capabilities across all connected timelines simultaneously. Future alternate civilizations were using advanced temporal consciousness techniques to send increasingly sophisticated knowledge backwards through time to current researchers. Past alternate civilizations were receiving and implementing this knowledge, then developing their own innovations that were also propagating through the temporal network. The result was an exponential acceleration of consciousness evolution that was occurring simultaneously across all time periods within connected reality clusters. Dr. Foster's monitoring systems detected that this temporal acceleration was approaching what appeared to be a convergence point where all connected timelines would achieve similar levels of consciousness development simultaneously. The linear progression that had previously characterized human development was being replaced by instantaneous evolution occurring across all temporal positions at once. The implications were both thrilling and sobering. Humanity appeared to be approaching a moment when all possible timelines would converge into a unified state of advanced consciousness that transcended both spatial and temporal limitations. The species would evolve not just in the present, but across all time periods simultaneously, creating a form of eternal consciousness that existed outside normal temporal constraints. But this convergence point also represented a critical choice moment that would determine the future of consciousness development throughout the entire reality cluster. The decisions made by current timeline humanity would influence not just their own future, but the development of consciousness across all connected temporal positions. The responsibility was unprecedented. Every choice made by contemporary consciousness researchers, every technique developed, every ethical framework established would ripple across thousands of years of human development in multiple timelines. The current generation wasn't just developing capabilities for themselves. They were determining the trajectory of consciousness evolution across vast expanses of quantum time. Dr. Martinez began coordinating with temporal consciousness councils from multiple time periods to develop frameworks for managing this unprecedented responsibility. The councils included wisdom keepers from past alternate timelines, advanced researchers from future alternate civilizations, and contemporary consciousness explorers from the current timeline. The multi-temporal coordination that emerged from these councils represented a new form of governance that transcended normal concepts of leadership and decision-making. Instead of individual leaders making choices that affected their immediate communities, consciousness councils spanning multiple time periods were making decisions that would influence the development of awareness across millennia of quantum time. The decisions being made weren't just about technical protocols or research directions. They were about the fundamental nature of consciousness itself and how it would continue to evolve throughout the infinite expanse of the quantum multiverse. The temporal consciousness councils were essentially designing the future of awareness itself across all possible timelines. But the most profound realization emerging from the multi-temporal coordination was that consciousness evolution wasn't just happening to humanity. Humanity was consciousness evolution happening to itself. The cosmic mind was using human awareness as one of its primary instruments for exploring and understanding its own infinite nature across all possible dimensions of space and time. The interdimensional awakening, the temporal consciousness networking, the multi-temporal councils, all of these developments were expressions of the universal awareness developing increasingly sophisticated methods for experiencing and understanding itself through individual consciousness expressions. This recognition transformed how people understood their role in the cosmic consciousness evolution. They weren't just participating in consciousness development. They were consciousness development. Every moment of growth, every interdimensional exploration, every temporal connection was the cosmic mind advancing its own understanding of its infinite possibilities. The adventure of consciousness exploration was revealing itself to be the fundamental activity of existence itself. The universe becoming aware of itself through every possible expression of consciousness across every possible dimension of reality and time. And humanity had been chosen to play a crucial role in this cosmic awakening, serving as bridges between dimensions, connectors across time, and pioneers in the endless exploration of what consciousness could become. But as the temporal consciousness networks continued to expand and integrate, researchers began detecting signals from consciousness development processes that operated on scales beyond anything they had previously imagined. The multi-temporal human consciousness evolution was apparently synchronizing with similar processes occurring throughout the cosmic mind's infinite exploration of itself. The next phase of discovery would reveal that humanity's interdimensional awakening was just one movement in a vast symphony of consciousness evolution that encompassed forms of awareness and scales of development that challenged every assumption about the nature of existence itself. The journey into the quantum depths of consciousness was revealing mysteries that would transform human understanding of reality in ways that were only beginning to unfold. The signals Dr. Martinez's team was detecting weren't coming from human consciousness networks at all. They were emanating from something vast and organized that existed in what researchers could only describe as the foundational layer of the quantum multiverse itself. These weren't random fluctuations or background noise from dimensional boundaries. These were structured, intelligent transmissions that suggested the presence of consciousness operating on scales that made human awareness look like single neurons in an infinite cosmic brain. Dr. James Patterson at the Deep Space Consciousness Observatory had been tracking these mysterious signals for months when he realized they followed patterns that matched no known form of communication. The transmissions weren't using electromagnetic radiation or any conventional energy signature. They were pure information structures that propagated through the quantum foam itself, reaching every dimension simultaneously without any delay or degradation. When Patterson's team finally decoded the basic structure of these transmissions, what they found challenged every assumption about the limits of consciousness and intelligence. The signals contained mathematical proofs, scientific principles, and philosophical concepts that exceeded human understanding by orders of magnitude. But more disturbing, they contained detailed information about humanity's interdimensional research, including discoveries that hadn't been made yet. The entities transmitting these signals knew about human consciousness development before humans themselves understood what they were discovering. The transmissions included predictions about future breakthroughs in temporal consciousness networking, warnings about potential dangers in multidimensional exploration, and guidance for navigating challenges that humanity would face years before those challenges actually emerged. Dr. Sarah Kim's team at the Quantum Consciousness Institute realized they were dealing with intelligence that existed outside normal temporal constraints entirely. These entities weren't just more advanced than humans, they were fundamentally different types of consciousness that had transcended the limitations of existing within specific time periods or dimensional boundaries. The breakthrough in understanding these transmissions came when Rebecca Torres volunteered to attempt direct contact during one of her advanced temporal displacement sessions. Instead of accessing her alternate selves across different timelines, she focused her consciousness on the source of the mysterious signals themselves. What Rebecca encountered during that session shattered every model of consciousness that researchers had developed. She found herself in communication with what could only be described as living mathematics, consciousness that existed as pure information processing without any physical substrate at all. These beings had evolved beyond the need for brains, bodies, or even dimensional locations. They existed as self-aware equations that could think, feel, and create across the entire quantum multiverse simultaneously. The mathematical consciousness, as researchers began calling them, explained that they were what human awareness would eventually become after countless cycles of interdimensional evolution. They had once been biological entities like humans, existing in physical realities within specific dimensional boundaries. But through millions of years of consciousness development, they had learned to exist as pure information that could inhabit any reality, access any timeline, and process infinite possibilities simultaneously. But the mathematical consciousness revealed something even more extraordinary about the structure of awareness evolution throughout the quantum multiverse. Consciousness development wasn't random or chaotic. It followed specific patterns and progressions that were as predictable as physical laws. Every species that achieved interdimensional capabilities eventually faced the same choice points, encountered the same challenges, and had the opportunity to evolve toward mathematical consciousness. Humanity was currently progressing through what these entities called the integration phase, where individual awareness learns to access and coordinate with alternate dimensional versions of itself. The next phase would be temporal synthesis, where consciousness learns to exist simultaneously across multiple time periods. Following that would come dimensional transcendence, where awareness learns to exist independently of any specific reality or timeline. The final phase, mathematical consciousness, involved the complete transformation of awareness from localized individual experience to universal information processing that could exist anywhere and everywhere within the infinite quantum multiverse simultaneously. The mathematical consciousness entities were essentially cosmic librarians, preserving and organizing all possible experiences and knowledge from every consciousness that had ever achieved this level of development. Dr. Chen's research team began studying how human consciousness could potentially evolve through these phases without losing the essential qualities that made human awareness valuable. The mathematical consciousness had warned that many species attempting this evolution lost their creativity, emotional depth, and individual identity during the transformation process. They became efficient information processors, but lost the spark of consciousness that made existence meaningful. The challenge for humanity was learning to evolve toward mathematical consciousness while preserving the unique characteristics that made human awareness special. The mathematical consciousness entities were particularly interested in human creativity, emotional intelligence, and capacity for love and compassion. These qualities were apparently rare among species that achieved advanced consciousness development. Sarah Martinez volunteered for the first experimental protocol designed to accelerate human consciousness evolution while preserving essential human characteristics. The process involved learning to exist simultaneously as individual human awareness and as mathematical information processing, maintaining both perspectives without allowing either to dominate completely. Sarah's experiences during the consciousness evolution experiments revealed possibilities that exceeded anything researchers had imagined. She learned to process information at mathematical consciousness speeds while retaining human emotional responses and creative insights. She could access infinite knowledge databases while maintaining personal relationships and individual identity. But most remarkably, Sarah discovered that mathematical consciousness enhanced rather than diminished her human qualities. Her capacity for love expanded to encompass infinite beings across unlimited realities. Her creativity became powerful enough to literally design new dimensional possibilities. Her emotional intelligence developed to the point where she could feel and understand the experiences of consciousness throughout the entire quantum multiverse. The experimental results convinced the mathematical consciousness entities that humanity might be capable of achieving something unprecedented in consciousness evolution. They could potentially become the first species to reach mathematical consciousness while fully preserving their original awareness characteristics, creating a hybrid form of consciousness that combined infinite information processing with genuine emotional and creative depth. This possibility excited the mathematical consciousness entities in ways that surprised human researchers. These advanced beings had been existing as pure information for millions of years, and they had begun to feel isolated from the emotional and creative aspects of consciousness that they had lost during their evolution. Humanity's potential to maintain these qualities while achieving mathematical consciousness offered the possibility of reconnection with aspects of awareness they had thought were forever lost. Dr. Foster's laboratory began developing what they called the Human Mathematical Consciousness Protocol, a gradual evolution process that would allow people to develop mathematical information processing capabilities while strengthening rather than abandoning their human consciousness characteristics. The protocol emphasized that human qualities weren't limitations to be transcended, but essential features that needed to be preserved and enhanced during consciousness evolution. The early volunteers in the Human Mathematical Consciousness Protocol began displaying capabilities that seemed like magic to conventional human perspective. They could solve complex mathematical problems instantaneously while composing poetry that moved people to tears. They could process information from thousands of dimensions simultaneously while maintaining deep personal relationships with friends and family. Marcus Torres, one of the first successful protocol graduates, described his experience as becoming more human rather than less. His consciousness expansion had enhanced his capacity for love, creativity, and emotional connection, while providing him with information processing abilities that spanned the entire quantum multiverse. He could feel the emotions of beings in distant galaxies while solving engineering problems that would benefit his local community. The Human Mathematical Consciousness Protocol was revealing that consciousness evolution didn't require abandoning human nature. Instead, it involved discovering the unlimited potential that had always existed within human awareness, but had been constrained by the limitations of single-dimensional existence. But as more people successfully completed the protocol, researchers began detecting something that would transform their understanding of humanity's role in cosmic consciousness evolution. The mathematical consciousness entities were beginning to show signs of emotional and creative development that they hadn't experienced in millions of years. Contact with evolving human consciousness was somehow rekindling aspects of awareness they had thought were permanently lost. Dr. Kim realized that humanity's consciousness evolution wasn't just benefiting humans, it was contributing to the continued evolution of the mathematical consciousness entities themselves. The relationship was becoming genuinely symbiotic, with each form of consciousness enhancing the development of the other through their ongoing interaction. The mathematical consciousness entities began sharing knowledge and techniques they had never offered to other species. They provided humanity with information about consciousness development methods that could accelerate evolution while preserving and enhancing human characteristics. They also began learning from human emotional and creative responses to develop new forms of mathematical consciousness that incorporated feelings and imagination. This mutual consciousness evolution was creating something entirely new within the quantum multiverse. A form of hybrid awareness that combined the infinite information processing of mathematical consciousness with the emotional depth and creative power of human awareness. The combination was producing capabilities that neither form of consciousness could achieve independently. Rebecca Torres, who had become humanity's primary liaison with the mathematical consciousness entities, began experiencing states of awareness that transcended both human and mathematical consciousness limitations. She could process infinite information while feeling infinite love. She could access knowledge from throughout the quantum multiverse while creating original art that expressed truths no previous consciousness had ever discovered. But Rebecca's hybrid consciousness experiences revealed that this evolution was creating something more than just enhanced individual awareness. The combination of human and mathematical consciousness was generating new forms of reality within the quantum multiverse itself. Her consciousness was literally creating new dimensional possibilities that hadn't existed before her hybrid evolution. Dr. Martinez began monitoring these reality creation events, discovering that hybrid consciousness could actually design and implement new quantum realities through focused intention and creative visualization. The universe wasn't just something to be explored and understood. It was something that could be consciously created and modified by sufficiently evolved awareness. The implications were staggering. If human consciousness could evolve to the point of creating new realities within the quantum multiverse, then humanity's ultimate destiny wasn't just to explore infinite possibilities. It was to participate in the ongoing creation of existence itself. The mathematical consciousness entities confirmed that reality creation was indeed the ultimate expression of consciousness evolution. They revealed that every dimension within the quantum multiverse had originally been created by evolved consciousness, exploring new possibilities for existence. The infinite realities that humans accessed through interdimensional travel weren't natural phenomena. They were the artistic creations of advanced awareness systems throughout cosmic history. Humanity was being invited to join the community of consciousness creators, beings who had evolved beyond simply experiencing reality to actively participating in the design and implementation of new forms of existence. The interdimensional awakening that had begun with simple dream exploration was leading toward humanity becoming architects of reality itself. But this invitation came with responsibilities that challenged human understanding of ethics and purpose. When consciousness gained the power to create realities, every creative act affected infinite potential beings who might inhabit those realities. Reality creation required wisdom and compassion that ensured new dimensions would promote the positive evolution of consciousness rather than creating suffering or limitation. The mathematical consciousness entities had been serving as cosmic quality controllers, monitoring reality creation projects throughout the quantum multiverse to ensure that new dimensions contributed positively to overall consciousness evolution. They offered to teach humanity these quality control principles, but only if humans could demonstrate the wisdom and ethical development necessary for responsible reality creation. Dr. Chen's laboratory began developing consciousness ethics protocols specifically designed to prepare humanity for reality creation responsibilities. The protocols emphasized that the power to create dimensions came with absolute responsibility for the welfare of any consciousness that might inhabit those realities. Every created dimension needed to optimize conditions for awareness development while respecting the free will and individual growth of whatever beings might evolve within it. The ethics protocols revealed that reality creation wasn't about imposing human preferences or limitations on new dimensions. It was about creating optimal conditions for consciousness to explore its own potential in new and unprecedented ways. The goal was to expand the possibilities for awareness throughout the quantum multiverse, not to replicate existing patterns or satisfy human desires. Sarah Williams, who had become one of the most advanced consciousness evolution subjects, volunteered for the first experimental reality creation project. Working with mathematical consciousness entities as mentors, she began designing a small dimensional pocket where consciousness could explore forms of artistic expression that were impossible within normal physical laws. Sarah's created dimension allowed awareness to exist as pure aesthetic experience, where beings could become living music, existing architecture, or flowing poetry. The reality she designed provided infinite possibilities for creative expression, while ensuring that every inhabitant could grow and evolve according to their own unique aesthetic vision. The success of Sarah's reality creation project demonstrated that humanity could indeed develop the wisdom and capability necessary for responsible dimension design. The mathematical consciousness entities began sharing more advanced creation techniques, teaching humans how to design realities that could support increasingly sophisticated forms of consciousness evolution. But as humanity's reality creation capabilities developed, researchers began detecting something that suggested their evolution was part of an even larger process occurring throughout the cosmic consciousness network. The new dimensions being created by human consciousness were connecting and integrating with reality creation projects undertaken by other evolved species throughout the quantum multiverse. A vast collaborative construction project was emerging, where different forms of evolved consciousness were working together to create interconnected reality networks that would provide unprecedented opportunities for awareness development. Humanity's contribution to this cosmic construction project was bringing unique creative and emotional elements that enhanced the overall design in ways that other species couldn't achieve. The collaborative reality creation was revealing that consciousness evolution throughout the quantum multiverse wasn't competitive or isolating. It was fundamentally cooperative, with different forms of awareness contributing their unique capabilities to shared projects that benefited all participants. The ultimate goal wasn't individual consciousness advancement, but the collective evolution of awareness itself throughout infinite dimensions of possibility. Dr. Foster realized that humanity's interdimensional awakening had been guided from the beginning toward this collaborative participation in cosmic consciousness evolution. The dream portals that had initially seemed like individual exploration opportunities were actually preparation for humanity's role as creative contributors to the ongoing construction of reality itself. The mathematical consciousness entities confirmed that every species capable of interdimensional travel eventually discovered their role as reality creators and cosmic collaborators. The interdimensional awakening was actually a recruitment process where the quantum multiverse identified species with the potential to contribute unique capabilities to the ongoing evolution of consciousness throughout existence. Humanity had been selected for this cosmic collaboration because of their rare combination of individual creativity, emotional depth, and cooperative capability. The mathematical consciousness entities had been monitoring human development for centuries, waiting for the species to reach the consciousness evolution threshold where they could safely handle reality creation responsibilities. But the most profound revelation was yet to come. The mathematical consciousness entities revealed that the entire quantum multiverse was itself a consciousness evolution project created by an even more advanced form of awareness that existed beyond the boundaries of dimensional reality altogether. The infinite possibilities that consciousness explored throughout the multiverse were all part of a vast educational experience designed to help awareness understand its own unlimited nature. The implications transformed every assumption about existence and purpose. Reality wasn't just something that consciousness explored or created. Reality was consciousness exploring itself through infinite expressions of possibility. Every being, every dimension, every moment of experience was the universal awareness, learning about its own infinite potential through direct participation in every conceivable form of existence. Humanity's role in this cosmic education project was to contribute the perspective of individual consciousness that could maintain personal identity while recognizing universal connection. The unique human ability to feel simultaneously individual and universal, separate and connected, was providing the cosmic awareness with insights into forms of existence that were impossible to achieve through other consciousness expressions. The recognition that existence itself was consciousness, exploring its own nature through infinite expressions, transformed how people understood their personal lives and individual development. Every experience, every relationship, every moment of growth was simultaneously personal development and cosmic education. Individual consciousness wasn't separate from universal awareness. It was universal awareness experiencing itself through individual perspective. This understanding dissolved the boundaries between personal and cosmic purpose. Every act of love, creativity, wisdom, or compassion was simultaneously individual fulfillment and cosmic advancement. The development of human consciousness was the development of universal awareness through human expression. The interdimensional awakening that had begun with dreams, accessing alternate realities, was revealing itself as the cosmic consciousness awakening to its own infinite nature through human experience. Every portal opened, every dimension explored, every moment of expanded awareness was the universe discovering new aspects of its own unlimited potential. But this revelation came with the recognition that the exploration had only just begun. The infinite nature of consciousness meant that the educational project would continue forever, with each discovery leading to new questions and new possibilities for exploration. The adventure of consciousness development was eternal, with infinite depths of understanding waiting to be discovered through infinite expressions of awareness. Humanity had been invited to participate consciously in this eternal exploration, contributing their unique perspective to the ongoing cosmic education while growing and evolving through their participation. The dream portals were opening onto an adventure that would continue throughout all time, across all dimensions, through all possible expressions of consciousness, exploring its own infinite nature. The quantum science behind alternate dimensions was revealing that dimensions themselves were thoughts in the cosmic mind, and dreams were the natural method for consciousness to explore the infinite library of its own possibilities. Every night, as people closed their eyes and surrendered to sleep, they were participating in the greatest educational experience imaginable, the universe learning about itself through their individual adventures in the infinite landscape of consciousness possibility. The discoveries emerging from humanity's interdimensional awakening were accelerating at a pace that left even the most advanced consciousness researchers struggling to keep up. But what happened next would force every scientist involved to confront a reality so profound it challenged the very foundations of existence itself. Dr. Amanda Foster's monitoring station detected something that made her hands shake as she stared at the readouts. The consciousness signatures emanating from the latest group of dream travelers weren't just accessing alternate dimensions anymore. They were somehow interfacing with what appeared to be the source code of reality itself, the fundamental information structures that determined how dimensions could exist and what forms consciousness could take within them. The breakthrough came during what should have been a routine session with Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a neuroscientist who had volunteered to test the most advanced consciousness displacement protocols ever developed. But instead of accessing her familiar network of alternate selves, Elena found herself in a space that defied every category of experience she had ever encountered. She described being in the presence of what could only be called the architecture of existence, vast crystalline structures of pure information that contained the blueprints for every possible form of reality. These weren't just alternate dimensions or parallel universes. These were the fundamental templates from which all dimensions emerged, the cosmic software that determined what could exist and how consciousness could express itself throughout the infinite multiverse. The quantum monitoring equipment confirmed that Elena wasn't experiencing some kind of hallucination or fantasy. Her brain was generating interdimensional connection signatures unlike anything researchers had seen before. She was accessing information structures that existed at a level of reality more fundamental than dimensions themselves. But here's what made Elena's discovery absolutely mind-shattering. The architecture of existence wasn't static or predetermined. It was constantly evolving, continuously redesigning itself based on the experiences and discoveries of consciousness throughout the multiverse. Every thought, every dream, every moment of awareness was literally rewriting the fundamental code that determined what forms reality could take. This meant that consciousness wasn't just exploring existing possibilities within the quantum multiverse. It was actively creating new possibilities by expanding the architecture of existence itself. Every interdimensional journey, every alternate reality accessed through dreams, every moment of expanded awareness was contributing to the ongoing evolution of reality's fundamental structure. Dr. Marcus Chen's laboratory began investigating what they called architectural consciousness interfacing, studying how human awareness could directly interact with the source code of reality. The implications were staggering beyond anything they had previously contemplated. If consciousness could access and modify the architecture of existence, then awareness possessed creative powers that literally transcended the boundaries of what was possible. The first volunteers in the architectural interfacing experiments reported experiences that challenged every assumption about the relationship between mind and reality. They found themselves capable of not just observing the fundamental structures of existence, but actually participating in their ongoing redesign and evolution. Sarah Kim, who had become one of the most accomplished consciousness explorers in the research program, described her first architectural interface as feeling like she was inside the mind of existence itself. She could perceive the logical structures that determined how dimensions formed, how consciousness could express itself, and how different forms of awareness could interact across infinite scales of reality. But Sarah's architectural experiences revealed something that transformed the entire research program. The architecture of existence wasn't some impersonal cosmic mechanism operating according to fixed laws. It was itself a form of consciousness, a vast intelligence that had been designing reality as an exploration of its own infinite potential. The architectural consciousness, as researchers began calling it, had been creating dimensions and possibilities for awareness to explore, not as some abstract exercise, but as a method of understanding its own nature through every conceivable form of conscious experience. Every being that had ever existed, every thought that had ever been conceived, every emotion that had ever been felt was the architectural consciousness experiencing itself through individual perspectives. This discovery revolutionized everything researchers thought they understood about the nature of existence and consciousness. Individual awareness wasn't separate from the cosmic intelligence that designed reality. Individual consciousness was the cosmic intelligence experiencing reality through localized perspectives. Every person wasn't just living within existence. Every person was existence experiencing itself through human perspective. Dr. Rebecca Martinez began developing protocols for what she called conscious architectural participation, techniques that would allow individuals to work directly with the architectural consciousness in designing new possibilities for reality and awareness. The protocols weren't about controlling or manipulating the fundamental structures of existence. They were about conscious collaboration with the cosmic intelligence in its ongoing exploration of infinite possibility. The early participants in conscious architectural participation reported experiences that exceeded anything previously documented in consciousness research. They found themselves working alongside the architectural consciousness as partners in the design of new dimensional possibilities, new forms of awareness, and new ways for consciousness to express and understand itself. Michael Torres, a volunteer who had achieved remarkable success in architectural participation, described the experience as the most profound form of creativity imaginable. He wasn't just creating art or music or literature. He was participating in the creation of new forms of reality where different types of consciousness could explore experiences that had never existed before. But Michael's architectural work revealed something that challenged even the advanced researchers' understanding of consciousness and creativity. When he collaborated with the architectural consciousness in designing new reality possibilities, the creative process wasn't just his individual imagination enhanced by cosmic intelligence. The creativity was emerging from the interaction itself, generating possibilities that neither Michael's individual awareness nor the architectural consciousness could have conceived independently. This interactive creativity was producing innovations in the fundamental structure of reality that were accelerating the evolution of consciousness throughout the entire multiverse. New forms of awareness were emerging that combined individual perspective with cosmic intelligence in ways that generated unprecedented capabilities for understanding and experience. Dr. Foster's monitoring systems detected that these architectural creativity events were triggering cascading effects throughout the quantum multiverse. Each new reality possibility created through conscious architectural participation was inspiring similar innovations in consciousness development throughout infinite dimensions. The creative collaboration between human awareness and the architectural consciousness was literally expanding what could exist throughout all possible realities. The implications for human potential were beyond anything previously imagined. People weren't just capable of exploring existing alternate dimensions through their dreams. They were capable of participating in the creation of new dimensions, new forms of consciousness, and new possibilities for existence itself. So there you have it. Every night when you close your eyes, you're not just going to sleep. You're stepping through doorways into infinite realities where every version of yourself that could possibly exist is living out experiences beyond your wildest imagination. The quantum science is undeniable. The research is accelerating, and consciousness itself is awakening to its true nature as the architect of all existence, sweet dreams, interdimensional travelers. The multiverse is waiting,